They laughed at the waitress because they thought she had nothing to offer, but they never realized the most powerful man in the room was watching every moment. Maya Robinson had learned a long time ago that people often noticed appearances before they noticed character. Working as a waitress at one of the most elegant wedding venues in Chicago, she had seen every kind of guest. She had served people who were grateful, people who were impatient, and people who believed their status gave them permission to treat others differently. Still, Maya always reminded herself that someone else's opinion did not define her worth. On this particular evening, the grand ballroom was filled with beautiful decorations, expensive clothing, and guests celebrating what was supposed to be a perfect wedding. Maya moved quietly between the tables, carrying trays, checking details, and making sure everyone had what they needed. She was professional, polite, and focused, even though she knew some guests would only see her as part of the background. The bride, Olivia Carter, was known for caring deeply about appearances. She wanted every detail of her wedding to look flawless, and she believed everything around her needed to match the image she had created. When Maya approached the main table to correct a small misunderstanding, Olivia looked at her with disappointment instead of appreciation. Her words were cold, and the people nearby noticed the uncomfortable moment. Maya felt the embarrassment, but she refused to let it change the way she carried herself. She simply apologized, handled the situation calmly, and continued doing her job. What no one in the room noticed was that someone else had been paying attention. Vincent Hayes sat across the ballroom, quietly observing everything around him. Unlike the guests who focused on appearances, Vincent noticed details others ignored. He noticed how Maya remained respectful even when she was not treated with the same respect. He noticed how she continued helping others without seeking attention. Most people in the room knew Vincent as a man with influence and power. His presence alone changed the atmosphere wherever he went. But Maya had no idea who he was. To her, he was simply another guest at a wedding. That was exactly what interested him. She did not try to impress him. She did not change her behavior because of his reputation. She treated him like a person. As the evening continued, Vincent found himself watching the woman everyone else had overlooked. He had met countless people who wanted recognition, approval, or opportunity, but Maya wanted none of those things. She simply wanted to do her work with dignity. For the first time in a long while, Vincent saw something that money and power could never create. He saw genuine character. And while the wedding guests continued celebrating without realizing what was happening, the most unexpected connection of the night had already begun. The woman they ignored had caught the attention of the one person everyone respected. Vincent Hayes had spent years surrounded by people who measured everything by appearance, influence, and opportunity. But the waitress at the wedding reminded him that the most valuable qualities were often the ones people ignored. After watching Maya Robinson handle an uncomfortable situation with patience and dignity, Vincent became curious about the person behind the quiet smile. He was used to seeing people change their behavior when they knew who he was, but Maya had treated him exactly the same as everyone else. She had no idea about his reputation, and that made every interaction feel different. As the wedding continued, Vincent noticed the small details that revealed Maya's character. She helped an elderly guest find a seat without expecting recognition. She checked on a family member who seemed overwhelmed. She continued working with the same professionalism even after the earlier moment with Olivia. To most people in the ballroom, those actions were easy to miss. To Vincent, they revealed more about her than any introduction could have. Maya had learned to move through the world without demanding attention. She knew some people would judge her before knowing her story, but she refused to allow those opinions to control her confidence. She had worked hard to build a life based on responsibility and self-respect. The uniform she wore did not represent her value, and she never allowed anyone to convince her otherwise. Vincent found that mindset unusual because his own world was filled with people trying to prove their importance. Many wanted to be noticed, admired, or connected to power. Maya wanted none of that. She simply wanted to be treated fairly and to treat others with the same kindness she hoped to receive. Later that evening, Vincent finally approached her. Maya expected another request from a guest, so she politely asked how she could help. She had no idea she was speaking to someone whose name carried significant influence throughout the city. Vincent asked about her experience working at the venue and listened carefully to her answers. He did not speak down to her or treat the conversation as a formality. For Maya, that simple respect felt different. She was used to people looking past her, but Vincent looked directly at her. Their conversation was brief, yet it left an impression on both of them. Vincent realized that Maya possessed a confidence that did not come from status or recognition. It came from knowing who she was. Maya, meanwhile, wondered why someone who seemed so composed and important would take the time to have a genuine conversation with her. She did not know that Vincent rarely gave his attention without a reason. But this time, his interest was not about business, influence, or strategy. It was about understanding someone who had shown strength without trying to prove anything. As the wedding guests continued their celebration, Vincent made a quiet decision. Before the night ended, he wanted to know more about the woman everyone had chosen to overlook. Because for the first time in years, someone had captured his attention without ever asking for it. Maya Robinson never expected that a simple conversation at a wedding would stay in someone else's thoughts, especially someone like Vincent Hayes. To her, the evening was just another long shift where she had done her best to provide excellent service despite being judged before anyone knew her story. She had learned that not every person would recognize her effort, and she had accepted that. Some people would only see what was on the surface, but Vincent saw something different. He saw the patience behind her actions and the confidence she carried even when others tried to make her feel small. After the wedding ended, Vincent found himself thinking about the way Maya handled herself. He had met many people who wanted to be noticed by him, but Maya was different because she had no idea who he was. She had not changed her attitude because of his reputation. She had simply treated him with the same respect she offered everyone else. That honesty was rare in Vincent's world. The next day, Vincent decided to learn more about her, not because he wanted to use his influence, but because he wanted to understand the person who had caught his attention. He discovered that Maya's life was built on determination. She had worked hard for years, supporting herself and creating stability through her own efforts. She was not someone waiting for another person to solve her problems. She had built her own strength quietly, without needing approval from anyone. Vincent respected that more than he expected. Meanwhile, Maya returned to her normal routine, unaware that one conversation had changed how someone viewed her. She continued working, helping customers, and focusing on her responsibilities. She did not realize that the qualities she considered ordinary were exactly what made her stand out. Her kindness was not something she performed for attention. It was simply part of who she was. As Vincent learned more about Maya, he began questioning some of the things he had always believed. He had spent years surrounded by people who carefully chose their words and actions because they wanted something from him. Maya did not approach life that way. She was honest even when honesty did not benefit her. She remained respectful even when others were not. She valued people based on character rather than position. These qualities made Vincent see the world from a different perspective. For the first time in a long time, he became interested in someone who had nothing to gain from knowing him. Their lives were completely different. Vincent lived in a world where decisions carried influence and responsibility. Maya lived in a world where every achievement came from patience and effort. Yet those differences created a connection that neither of them expected. Vincent knew he could not simply appear in Maya's life without considering the impact it might have. He understood that his world was complicated, and he did not want his presence to become another challenge she had to overcome. But he also knew that ignoring the connection would mean ignoring something genuine. As Maya continued her everyday life, she had no idea that the man who watched her from across the wedding hall was beginning to see her in a way no one else had before. And Vincent Hayes, a man who believed he understood people better than anyone, was about to discover that the person he least expected would teach him the greatest lesson about respect and value. Vincent Hayes had always believed that people revealed themselves through their choices, and Maya Robinson had shown him something he rarely encountered in his own world. She did not seek attention, influence, or approval. She simply lived with honesty and treated others with the same respect she hoped to receive. That quality stayed in Vincent's mind long after the wedding ended. He found himself thinking about how easily people overlooked those who did not fit their expectations. Maya had been standing in a room filled with expensive decorations, important guests, and carefully created images, yet she remained the person with the most genuine presence. Vincent wanted to understand why. A few days later, their paths crossed again when Vincent visited a restaurant where Maya worked. She was surprised to see him, but she greeted him with the same calm professionalism as before. She did not act nervous or attempt to impress him. She simply welcomed him as a customer. That small moment confirmed what Vincent had already noticed. Maya was not pretending to be humble. It was simply who she was. During their conversation, Vincent asked about her goals and what she hoped to achieve in life. Maya smiled and explained that she was focused on building a stable future and continuing to grow as a person. She spoke about her work with pride, not because it defined her, but because it represented her determination. Vincent respected the way she viewed life. She understood that success was not only measured by money or recognition. It was also measured by character, effort, and the ability to remain kind. Maya, meanwhile, began noticing that Vincent was not like the people she had assumed he might be. He was quiet and serious, but he listened carefully when she spoke. He did not interrupt or dismiss her opinions. He treated her thoughts as something valuable. That was unusual for Maya because many people had already decided who she was before taking the time to know her. As they continued talking, Vincent revealed small pieces of his own life. He did not explain everything, but Maya could sense that his responsibilities were much greater than he admitted. There was a weight behind his words, a feeling that he carried expectations from many people. She did not ask unnecessary questions. Instead, she allowed him to share only what he was comfortable revealing. That patience surprised Vincent. He was used to people wanting answers immediately, but Maya understood that trust required time. Their conversations became a place where both of them could be honest without worrying about appearances. Vincent began realizing that Maya offered something rare, a connection without conditions. She did not care about what he represented. She cared about who he was during the moments when no one else was watching. Maya also started seeing a different side of Vincent. The powerful image others knew was only one part of him. Behind it was someone who had spent years carrying responsibility and rarely allowing himself to relax. Neither of them expected their lives to become connected, but each conversation created a stronger understanding. And while Maya continued believing she was simply having conversations with a thoughtful customer, Vincent knew he had found someone who made him question everything he thought he understood about people. Vincent Hayes had built his entire life around careful decisions, but meeting Maya Robinson reminded him that some of the most meaningful moments could not be planned. He was used to understanding people quickly, recognizing their intentions, and knowing what they wanted before they said it. Yet Maya remained different because she never tried to gain anything from him. She did not know his reputation, his influence, or the world he came from. She only knew the person sitting in front of her, and that honesty continued to surprise him. As their conversations became more frequent, Vincent started noticing how much strength existed behind Maya's quiet personality. She had faced moments when others judged her without knowing her story, but she never allowed those experiences to change the way she treated people. She believed kindness was a choice, not something that depended on how others behaved. That belief stayed with Vincent because it was the opposite of the environment he had known for most of his life. Maya also began seeing that Vincent was carrying more responsibility than he revealed. He was always composed, always thoughtful, and always prepared, but she noticed the moments when he seemed lost in his thoughts. She understood that people who appeared the strongest often carried the heaviest burdens. Instead of asking him to explain everything, she simply reminded him that he did not always have to carry everything alone. For Vincent, those words had a powerful impact. He was surrounded by people who respected his position, but very few people cared about how he felt as a person. Maya did not treat him like someone untouchable. She treated him like someone who deserved understanding. One evening, Vincent invited Maya to a quiet dinner away from the busy environment where they first met. He wanted to know more about her life, her dreams, and the experiences that shaped her. Maya shared stories about her journey, including the challenges she faced and the lessons she learned along the way. She explained that she had stopped allowing other people's opinions to decide how she viewed herself. Vincent admired that confidence because it was not based on appearance, status, or recognition. It came from knowing her own worth. During their conversation, Maya asked Vincent a simple question about whether he was happy with the life he had created. The question caught him off guard because he rarely allowed himself to think about happiness. He had spent years focusing on responsibility and expectations, leaving little room for personal reflection. Maya did not judge his answer. She simply encouraged him to consider what he truly wanted beyond what others expected from him. That moment changed something inside Vincent. He realized that Maya was not just someone who made him feel understood. She was someone who challenged him to look at himself differently. Meanwhile, Maya began to wonder why a man with so much influence would continue making time for someone like her. She did not see herself as extraordinary, but Vincent saw qualities she had overlooked. As their connection grew stronger, neither of them realized that their lives were moving toward a moment when the entire truth about Vincent's world would finally come into view. Vincent Hayes had always understood the importance of keeping his personal life separate from his responsibilities. He believed that emotions could create complications, and he had spent years building a careful distance between himself and the people around him. But Maya Robinson had changed that perspective without even trying. She never demanded his attention, never asked about his influence, and never treated him differently because of the power he carried. She simply saw him as a person. That was something Vincent had not experienced in a very long time. As their connection continued to grow, Vincent realized that Maya brought a sense of honesty into his life that he had been missing. She did not pretend to understand everything about his world, but she was willing to listen. She did not judge what she did not know, and that patience made him trust her more. For someone who was used to controlling every situation, trusting another person was unfamiliar territory. Maya also began noticing that Vincent was different from the image people created around him. Others saw confidence, influence, and authority. She saw someone who carried responsibility quietly and rarely allowed himself to relax. She understood that even people who appeared powerful could feel isolated. That understanding created a connection between them that went beyond curiosity. One afternoon, Vincent invited Maya to see a different side of his life. He wanted her to understand that there was more to him than the reputation people talked about. Maya noticed the contrast immediately. His world was organized, demanding, and filled with expectations. Yet beneath all of that, she recognized the same person she had spoken with during their first conversations. Vincent was thoughtful, careful, and more considerate than most people would ever expect. Maya did not react with surprise or excitement about his lifestyle. Instead, she focused on the person standing in front of her. That reaction meant more to Vincent than she realized. He had spent years surrounded by people who were interested in what he represented, but Maya was interested in who he was when the attention disappeared. During their conversation, Vincent finally shared more about the challenges that shaped him. He explained that responsibility had always been a major part of his life. Many choices he made affected other people, and that pressure had taught him to be careful with every decision. Maya listened and reminded him that being responsible did not mean he had to ignore his own feelings. Her words stayed with him because they came from someone who expected nothing in return. Meanwhile, Maya started realizing that her connection with Vincent was not based on admiration or curiosity. It was built on mutual understanding. She appreciated that he respected her opinions and valued her perspective. Vincent appreciated that she reminded him of the importance of kindness and authenticity. However, both of them knew that their growing bond would eventually face challenges. Vincent's world was not simple, and Maya's life had its own struggles. The difference between them was clear, but so was the respect they had developed. And as Vincent looked at Maya, he realized that the woman others had ignored was becoming the person who understood him better than anyone else. Vincent Hayes had spent years believing that trust was something difficult to find, but Maya Robinson continued, proving that genuine connection could appear in the most unexpected moments. Their conversations had become a place where both of them could step away from the expectations surrounding their lives. For Vincent, it was a rare opportunity to be seen without the weight of his reputation. For Maya, it was a reminder that she deserved to be valued for who she was, not judged by assumptions others created about her. As their relationship grew stronger, Vincent started noticing changes in himself. He was still careful, still responsible, and still aware of the many obligations connected to his position, but he no longer viewed every personal connection as a possible complication. Maya had shown him that allowing someone closer did not mean losing control. It meant allowing himself to experience something real. Maya also began understanding more about the challenges Vincent carried. She saw that his confidence came from years of responsibility, not from believing he was above others. Behind his calm expression was someone who had spent a long time putting other people's needs before his own. She admired that dedication, but she also wanted him to understand that he was more than the responsibilities he carried. One evening, they talked about the different paths that brought them to where they were. Maya shared how often people underestimated her because of her appearance. She explained that there were moments when she felt invisible, but she chose not to let those moments change the person she wanted to be. Vincent listened carefully because he recognized a type of strength he rarely saw. Many people around him had power because of their position, but Maya had strength because of her character. Her confidence came from surviving difficult experiences while still choosing kindness. Vincent realized that this was the reason she stood out. She did not need to prove herself because she already understood her own value. As he learned more about her, Vincent found himself questioning the way he had viewed the world for so long. He had always believed that people were motivated by what they wanted to gain, but Maya reminded him that some people acted with kindness simply because it was the right thing to do. That lesson changed his perspective more than he expected. However, their growing connection also brought new challenges. Vincent knew that his life was complicated, and he understood that Maya needed to know the truth about the world surrounding him. He did not want her to feel like she had been brought into something without understanding the reality. At the same time, he feared that revealing everything might change the way she saw him. Maya sensed that Vincent was carrying something important. She did not pressure him, but she reminded him that honesty was the foundation of any meaningful relationship. Those words gave Vincent something to think about. For the first time in years, he was not worried about protecting his image. He was worried about protecting something much more valuable. As the distance between them continued to disappear, Vincent realized that the woman everyone had overlooked had become the person who inspired him to become better. And soon, the truth about his world would test whether the trust they built was strong enough to remain unchanged. Vincent Hayes knew that the moment he revealed more about his life, everything between him and Maya Robinson could change. For years, he had protected his personal world carefully, believing that keeping people at a distance was the best way to avoid disappointment and unnecessary complications. But Maya had shown him that distance could also create loneliness. She had never asked him to become someone different. She only encouraged him to be honest about who he already was. That was something Vincent valued more than he expected. When Vincent finally decided to share more about his responsibilities and the reality of his position, Maya listened with the same patience she had always shown. She did not react with fear or excitement. Instead, she focused on understanding the person behind the reputation. She realized that the man others viewed as untouchable was someone who had spent years carrying expectations and making difficult choices. Vincent was surprised by her response because he had prepared himself for judgment. He had expected her to see him differently once she knew more, but Maya reminded him that a person's character was not defined by rumors or appearances. It was defined by the choices they made and the way they treated others. That perspective stayed with him. Maya also began to understand why Vincent had become the person he was. His world required discipline, focus, and constant awareness. But beneath all of that was someone who wanted genuine connection. She saw that his strength was not only in his ability to lead. It was also in his willingness to learn and change. For Vincent, that realization was important because he had always believed that showing uncertainty was a weakness. Maya helped him see that being open was not the same as being weak. It was a sign of trust. As their bond continued growing, they faced the reality that their lives were very different. Maya had built her world through patience, hard work, and personal determination. Vincent had built his through responsibility and influence. They came from different places, but they shared the same desire to be understood for who they truly were. One evening, Maya returned to the subject that had brought them closer from the beginning. She told Vincent that she never wanted anyone to feel invisible because of their appearance, background, or position. She believed everyone deserved respect. Vincent realized that this simple belief was one of the reasons he admired her so much. In his world, people often searched for ways to gain importance. Maya had importance because of the way she treated others. Meanwhile, Maya began recognizing her own growth. She no longer saw herself as someone who needed approval from people who judged her quickly. She understood that being respected started with respecting herself. Vincent had not given her confidence. He had simply been one of the first people to truly notice the confidence that was already there. But as their connection became stronger, They both knew that the outside world would eventually notice the changes happening between them. The people who only saw appearances would have their own opinions, and Vincent understood that protecting their connection would require honesty and courage. Yet for the first time in many years, he was ready to face uncertainty because he had found something worth being honest about. The night that changed everything began with a simple realization for Vincent Hayes. He had spent years believing that power, responsibility, and control were the things that defined him. But Maya Robinson had shown him a different way to understand his own life. She reminded him that a person was not measured by what they owned, the influence they carried, or the image others created around them. A person was measured by the choices they made and the way they treated others when no one was watching. From the moment they met, Maya had never looked at Vincent through the lens of reputation. She had never been interested in what he could provide or what his name represented. She saw the person behind everything else, and that changed something inside him that he never expected. Vincent realized that the woman many people overlooked had qualities that could not be found through wealth or status. Maya had strength because she remained kind in situations where others would have become bitter. She had confidence because she knew her own worth even when others failed to recognize it. She had dignity because she never allowed someone else's opinion to decide who she was. Those qualities became the reason Vincent respected her so deeply. Maya also looked back on how much her own perspective had changed. For years, she had believed that being underestimated was something she simply had to accept. But her connection with Vincent helped her understand that being unseen by others did not mean she lacked value. The right people would recognize the qualities that were already there. She did not need to become someone different to deserve respect. She only needed to continue being true to herself. As time passed, Vincent and Maya discovered that their differences were not obstacles. They were the reason they learned so much from each other. Vincent showed Maya that her kindness was powerful, not something that made her easy to overlook. Maya showed Vincent that opening his heart did not take away his strength. Together, they created a connection built on honesty, patience, and mutual respect. The people who once judged Maya by appearances had only seen one small part of her story. They never saw her determination, her compassion, or the quiet confidence she carried every day. Vincent saw those things from the beginning, and that was why his perspective never changed. He knew that true value was often hidden beneath what the world noticed first. Looking back at the wedding where everything began, Vincent understood how unexpected their meeting had been. A moment that others considered insignificant became the beginning of a completely different future. Maya had entered his life without trying to change it, yet she changed the way he viewed the world. Vincent had entered hers without making promises, yet he reminded her that she deserved to be appreciated and respected. Their story was never about one person saving another. It was about two people discovering that they were stronger when they allowed themselves to be understood. And in the end, the person everyone overlooked became the person who taught the most powerful man in the room the true meaning of respect, kindness, and connection.